you something in reference to a call I got last night here on on WIP last night. It was an Eagle fan who was none too pleased with a Giant player from early in the game on Saturday. The first time Jalen Hurts ran the ball, he said that a Giants defensive back, he thought it was Julian Love, came flying in late to try and put a really hard lick on Jalen Hurts. He didn't get flagged for it. It wasn't a late hit. It wasn't a penalty type play, but he was trying to hit Jalen Hurts hard. And I said last night, we're talking about football here, right? That even though it's a less physical game than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years, it's still a tackling game. And I didn't think the play that he was referencing was an overly physical play, but that's the way he judged it. Do you think that's a factor this week? Do the 49ers specifically try and make sure that they not only take Jalen Hurts down, but take him down hard? I'll ask it of both you, McMullen, and I'll re-ask it if I have to for Jimmy Kempski, who we are lucky enough to be able to get there.
It's a Christmas miracle.
There you go. Very good, JK. So I'll quickly just repeat the question for you. First play, Jalen ran last week. Giant D-back flying in late, trying to make sure it was a hard hit on the play. 49ers do the same this week? The
49ers just
always a week more healthy.
They hit you as hard as they can, no matter what.
Yeah, it's a physical team.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about them necessarily, targeting Jalen Hurts with physical tackling hits, whatever, because they just do that to everyone anyway. And certainly, as Jalen Hurts even said prior to the Giants game, there's a bounty on me every week, as there is for every other quarterback in the NFL. So, I mean, yeah, of course, and it's the playoffs too. If they can, get a big shot on Jalen Hurts, like any other team, they're going to take it and they're going to try to get him out of the game. I mean, it sounds barbaric, but that's just the nature of the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. He's right. And people know, the injury's there. So yeah, they're going to try to hit him hard. Hopefully within the rules, but they're going to try to get physical. And as Jimmy said, that's everybody, including Brock Purdy, by the way. And I want to get Jimmy Kempski's thought. Do you believe in Brock Purdy? Where are you with Brock Purdy? This is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You got to give him credit, but I just don't believe it.
Yeah, he's made some nice plays, and he can extend plays and make off schedule plays. He's been good enough. Obviously, he's got a great team around him. Those skill position players are awesome. The offensive line is very good. But he's been very lucky with a lot of throws that he's made that have been way off target, that have found their way to the ground instead of in the arms of defenders. So he's been very lucky to avoid a lot of interceptions that could have been interceptions. And when does that luck run out? I thought it might run out against the Cowboys, who led the league in takeaways this year, as they did a year ago. I think they had 34 last year, 33 this year. They had a chance. Trayvon Diggs had one right in his stomach and he dropped it. So the Eagles, when they get those opportunities, they have to make sure that they make the most of them because he will throw it to the other team eventually. I'm with you. I don't totally buy this. I mean, we've seen people like comparing him to Tom Brady. Like, get the hell out of here with that nonsense. It's insanity. Give him a credit. He's come in and he's done a great job as their number 3 quarterback, but he's certainly not on the level of any of the other 3 quarterbacks that remain in the playoffs.
The guy I've compared him to, believe it or not, is Kurt Warner.
Okay.
I fielded those same exact calls in 1999. At some point, Cinderella's got to turn back into a pumpkin. Who the hell is Kurt Warner? He's an Arena League guy. And it didn't stop until they became the greatest show on turf and won the Super Bowl. But we'll see if that plays here. Jimmy, if Purdy's got a chance to throw a pick, which he surely does, but we're looking at what the teams achieved. Early in the year, the Eagles were runaway leaders in plus minus in the National Football League. Had built up a pretty big lead, as a matter of fact, but they gave it back, and the team that went by them is the 49ers. They're plus 13 for the year, best in the NFL. Eagles at plus 8, third. Not bad either, but not as good as the 49ers. Why do we believe the Eagles are the team that's more likely to get the big turnover in this game?
The Niners are +3 in the playoffs as well. And you look at the Eagles' losses this season, they were -2 against Washington, I believe. They were -3 against Dallas. And then in the Saints game, I think it was even, but the pick six basically ended that game.
Yep. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't necessarily know that the Eagles are going to be on the plus side of the turnover differential in this season. I think if they stalemate on that front, then that's a win. Because I think they're the more talented team. The 49ers live off these turnovers. And obviously, as you mentioned, they've done a good job not turning it over. I think they only have 17 turnovers on their own. So just one per game, which is, I think, third in the NFL, or was during the regular season. So yeah, you mentioned the +13 on the season, +3 in the postseason. They just got to make sure they don't turn it over, which is like, that's not exactly A+ analysis. Like, don't turn the ball over. Yeah, no kidding. But I think there are certain things that, you can prioritize.
Well, I mean, that's what the Eagles prioritize, Jimmy.
Sure.
All they say is turnovers, explosive plays. Win those two battles, you win the game.
You don't want to be fighting for extra yards against this team. Make sure you have the ball with two hands as runners. And I don't think you want to be sending Quez Watkins on precision routes that require him to be at an exact spot at an exact time. If you want to take a deep shot down the field to him, fine. But there are certain things that you can do to maybe lessen your chances of turning the ball over. And in this game, where, again, I think the Eagles are the more talented team, but the gap between them and this opponent is much, much more narrow than any other opponent that they have faced this season. And, even just, being -1 can sort of turn the tide in the Niners' favor.
Now, it's interesting. Because I'm of the belief that these are the two most talented teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I might be with you on that.
We all talk about the AFC, but it's mainly quarterback based.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and that's what I was going to ask you. From 2 through 53, we all kind of know Jalen Hurts is better than Brock Purdy. From 2 through 53, you still think the Eagles are more talented than the 49ers?
I kind of do. There are a couple of different things that I look at there. Their receivers are better. Their cornerbacks are better. Their pass rush overall is better. They got 4 guys with 11 plus sacks. The Niners have, Nick Bosa, and then, not much else, at least in terms. I think their second leading sacker had like 5 on the season. His name is escaping me. Fred Warner obviously is
who got arrested for domestic violence. He might
Amenahu, that's it. Yeah.
Amenahu,
Fred Warner is obviously a phenomenal player. In my mind, the best off-ball linebacker in the NFL. The Eagles aren't on that level with their linebacker. I mean, him and Dre Greenlaw are awesome. Like, that's a great duo linebacker.
Even their third linebacker is pretty good. Al Shahir, he's pretty good as well. So they're loaded at linebacker. But you still think the Eagles are better?
Yeah, and I'll give the Eagles the edge on the offensive line too. So I have the Eagles better offensive line, better defensive line, better wide receivers, better cornerbacks. So like it's a pretty it's a pretty big advantage. I'll give the Niners an advantage, a very clear advantage at running back. It's close at tight end, but Kittle's better than Goddard in my opinion. And then linebacker, there's a big advantage for the Niners. So I actually do think that the Eagles have the better roster, quarterbacks aside, and then I also think the quarterback is substantially better than Brock Purdy.
JK, one matchup that you always hope it doesn't come down to, at least most football fans don't, is kicker. Now, it's Jake Elliott's home field. The home field advantage should come into kicking too. You know it better than the other guy, but Robbie Gould never misses. Is there a kicking advantage in this game?
Yeah, I think it's even. Yeah, they're both really good kickers. As far as special teams overall, Brett Kern finally had a good game. I thought, up until that Giants game, he was pretty shaky, but he had a good game against the Giants, pinned him, deep. Actually, I think inside the 10, maybe even 3 times. Definitely inside the 20 3 times. So yeah, I don't know that there's necessarily a huge advantage special teams wise for either team. Whereas there probably would have been if they had been facing the Cowboys this week with Kevontae Turpin as their returner. But I think this is one team that I don't necessarily think the Eagles have an advantage here, but I think it's kind of a wash in this game, which the Eagles will take with some of their special teams play this year.
The most interesting matchup to me in this game, Jimmy, is Nick Bosa against the Eagles' offensive tackles. You know, since he's gotten to San Francisco, he had the great rookie year. They went to the Super Bowl. Then he got injured. They had a difficult year. Then he came back. They made it to the NFC Championship game. And if it wasn't for our buddy Jaquaski Tart, maybe they go back to the Super Bowl again.
That's right.
And here they are in the championship game as well. To me, he's their Lane Johnson. When they're on the field, when he's on the field, the 49ers typically win. When Lane Johnson is on the field, the Eagles typically win.
Yeah.
Lane hasn't given up a sack since, I think, 1933 when the Eagles were founded. This guy's the best pass rusher in football. Who gets – and Lane's not 100%, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Advantage anybody?
They do different things with him, and
yeah.
So
I hope he's on both sides. Yeah.
Just this morning, I watched his 18.5 sacks this year, and I'm sorry, I just pulled something up on my phone here because I wrote about it this morning. But I watched all those sacks. 6 of them came against backups. 4 of them came when he was unblocked. 3 of them, I determined they were like coverage sacks. 2 of them shouldn't have counted because one he was way off sides. The other one, he tripped the quarterback. He didn't the quarterback was trying to escape. He literally tripped him and they didn't call it. 2 were against rookies, and then 2 were against veteran starters. Okay. So the ones where he came unblocked, it sounds like I'm trying to diminish those, but his speed looping from the outside to the inside is kind of something to behold. I think their game plan against Nick Bosa isn't so much can Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson handle this guy? It's can they make sure their scheme doesn't leave him unblocked? Because that happened often this year on a number of his sacks, again, with just things that the 49ers do up front to try to free him up. But in terms of a guy who's just, killing the offensive tackle opposite him, it happens, but he's often doing it against lesser talent. He's not doing that against guys like, I won't put Jordan Mailata way ahead of the guys that he's doing this to, but certainly I would with Lane Johnson. And he rushes from both sides, so he can, they can put him wherever they want to put him, and he's effective on each side. But I do think that his legendary status is maybe a little bit overstated.
Overblown.
Overstated. He's an awesome player. Don't get me wrong. He's got explosiveness. He's got speed. And then once you start thinking about his speed around the edge, he beats you with speed to power moves where he's just basically putting the offensive tackle on roller skates, pushing him back into the pocket, and then the quarterback has nowhere to go. So again, I don't mean to diminish this player in any way, but I think that there is maybe a little bit of a misconception of him just smoking these, offensive tackles left and right. I think as long as you get him, matched up against Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, I think the Eagles will be fine. It's more just, can the 49ers scheme him up to get him free on rushes, because he doesn't miss when he gets an advantage like that.
Speaking of scheming it up, how much game playing, stunting, and the like you think Gannon will do against this San Francisco offensive line? Because as good as Mailata and Johnson are, Williams is just as good at left tackle for the 49ers. Now, McGlinchey's not as good as either of the Eagle tackles. Mm-hmm. So if you're just going to compare 2 to 2, probably advantage Eagles. But Williams might be the top one of them all. Do they try and get something going to neutralize the fact that he might be the best left tackle in football?
Yeah, I mean, they've done a lot of that with Hassan Reddick recently, like everything I just explained with Nick Bosa, where he's looping inside. They've done some of that with Hassan Reddick, and that's been effective. And man, Hassan Reddick is hot. He is absolutely tearing offensive tackles apart lately. And yeah, I think that's a matchup that is certainly harder this week against Mike McGlinchey than it was a week ago against Evan Neal, who was totally outclassed in that game. The interior of their offensive line is fine, but it's not, they don't have what the Eagles have in, Landon Dickerson, Jason Kelsey, Isaac Samuel. Those 3 guys on the interior are just kind of guys. And I think that the Eagles can do some damage perhaps inside there with Javon Hargrave, with Fletcher Cox. Josh Sweat has been playing a little bit inside on obvious passing downs. Brandon Graham has done that for years, of course. So I think they can do some damage there. But yeah, there are matchups to be won. Obviously, Trent Williams is an absolute star at left tackle, and whoever you're putting out against him, if you can get anything from that side, then great. But you don't count on that, of course. But yeah, the Eagles are, if they're going to win against this offensive line, it's going to be on the interior or with Reddick against McGlinchey.
All right. At Jimmy Kempski, I know you got to run. So last one from me, phillyboys.com. Make sure you read. Jimmy does a tremendous job. Just alleviated some of your concerns over Nick Bosa. I will say, skill position wise, obviously this is probably the best group that the Eagles have seen from a defensive perspective. You have Christian McCaffrey, who's a headache, Deebo Samuel, manufacturer touch guy, Brandon Ayuk, big play threat down the field. George Kittle, we all know how good he is. Is some of that mitigated by the quarterback? Do you not have to be as concerned because, playmakers are at the mercy of the quarterback? Somebody's got to get him the football.
I was blown away by how often the receivers were able to just get wide open, more so against the Seahawks in their wild card matchup than in the Dallas game, over the weekend. They had a little more trouble getting open against that Dallas defense. But yeah, they're getting wide open for Brock Purdy. And a lot of that has to do with their effectiveness, in the run game. And when they do get open and they're in a position to get yards after the catch, that's what they do. I mean, this set of skill position players break tackles like no other skill position group in the NFL. And it starts at Deebo and it continues through with Kittle and Ayuk, as you mentioned, and Christian McCaffrey may as well just be a receiver as well. Like in addition, him and Deebo are basically the same player. In my opinion, like Deebo can be a running back, McCaffrey can be a wide receiver, and their play styles are actually pretty similar. So if you're the Eagles, if you're going to give up some passes, and they games where they struggled tackling, those were more toward the beginning of the season. They've been better on that front, and
they've tightened up.
In the back half of the year, but that is still sort of in the back of my mind that they did struggle with tackling at points during the season, and they have to make sure that they not only tackle well, but they get a lot of bodies to the football, because they are going to break some tackles. You just got to make sure that if they break a tackle, it doesn't go for a touchdown, and maybe it's a couple extra yards instead of a touchdown. But they got to swarm to the football. Can't give up on any play against this team. You have to keep flowing to the football at all times, and make sure you get these guys on the ground, because that's where they kill you. Not necessarily, getting a lot of their damage is done after they have the ball in their hands, as opposed to the ball actually flying through the air to them.
Tackling will be a key aspect in this game on Sunday. There's a novel idea in football. Tackling is key. Glad to see it. Jimmy, always glad to see you too, buddy. Thank you much for jumping in with us. Enjoy the game, and feel free to abuse McMullen in the press box on Sunday.
All right, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jimmy.
That's Jimmy Kempski from Philly Boys here with us on Birds 365. All right, J-Mac coming back. We got to put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.